There's a baby in Peppa Pig who got an entire episode celebrating his arrival, and then basically vanished. He shows up at the odd family party, gets handed around like a warm bread roll, and no adult in the village ever seems to wonder where he goes the rest of the time. 10 years. Over 400 episodes. And this kid is a ghost. Stick around, because by the end of this, you're going to look at that little cartoon world completely differently. Okay, so here's the thing about Peppa Pig. On the surface, it's the most innocent show on television. Bright colors, 4-minute episodes, everybody snorts, everybody jumps in muddy puddles. But if you actually pay attention to the babies, and I mean really pay attention, the whole thing starts to feel like a village with a very strange population policy. Because there are a lot of babies, more than you'd think, and almost none of them get treated like they actually live there. So let's go through every single one of them, where they came from, who they belong to, and the ones that seem to just get forgotten about. Because that last part is where it gets genuinely weird, the one everybody knows. Let's start with the obvious one, George. George is Peppa's little brother, and honestly, he's the baby the entire show is built around. He's a toddler pig who says maybe 4 words per episode, cries at the drop of a hat, and is completely, hopelessly obsessed with dinosaurs. His whole personality is one plastic dinosaur named Mr. Dinosaur, and if that dinosaur goes missing, the episode is basically a hostage negotiation. Now here's a fun detail most people never clock. George is voiced almost entirely by crying, giggling, and the word dinosaur. That's it. It's one of the easiest voice acting jobs you'll ever see, and yet George might be the most emotionally consistent character in the entire show because he wants one thing, he wants it forever, and he will lose his mind if he doesn't get it. Honestly, relatable. But George is the normal one. 2 parents, a sister, a house on a hill. He's the control group. Keep him in mind because the further we go, the further everything drifts from normal. The friends who all conveniently have baby siblings. Here's something the show does that you don't notice as a kid, but absolutely notice as an adult. Almost every one of Peppa's friends has a younger sibling who's roughly George's age, and it doesn't feel like a coincidence. It looks like a design decision, and it's kind of genius. Take Susie Sheep, Peppa's best friend. Then look 1 row down and there's nobody actually. Susie's an only child. No baby brother, no baby sister, no toddler underfoot. Hold that thought, because Susie turns out to be one of the most quietly interesting kids in the whole village, and we'll come back to her. But look at Danny Dog. Danny's the little pirate-obsessed kid who wants to be a sailor like his grandpa dog. And Danny doesn't have a baby sibling either. Neither does Pedro Pony, the sleepy one who's always late and can never find his glasses. So who does? Well, here's where the pattern kicks in. Rebecca Rabbit has a baby brother named Richard Rabbit. And Richard is basically George's best friend. Same age, same tantrums, same habit of wanting whatever the other one is holding. It looks a lot like Rebecca got a little brother, so George would have someone to play with while the older kids do older kid things. It's clean. It's efficient. It's the kind of thing a parent watching at 7 a.m. would never question. And it doesn't stop there. Emily Elephant has a younger sibling too, Edmund Elephant. Except Edmund isn't a baby, he's the clever clogs, the little know-it-all who corrects the adults and makes everyone in the room feel slightly dumber than they did a minute ago. So Emily's covered, just with a different flavor of small sibling. You starting to see it? The show quietly grew a second generation of toddlers, and the effect is that the toddler characters never run out of playmates. But the way it happened created some absolutely bizarre gaps. And those gaps are where the real story is. Peppa Pig, the show with more babies than parents. Alright, let's talk about the rabbits. Because the rabbit family is where Peppa Pig stops making sense and starts feeling like a fever dream. There's Mummy Rabbit, who's Rebecca and Richard's mom. But the character everyone actually remembers is her sister, Miss Rabbit. And Miss Rabbit works more jobs than anyone in television history. She runs the supermarket, she's the checkout lady, she's also the librarian. She drives the recycling truck, she's the dental nurse. She works at the ticket office at the museum. She flies the rescue helicopter. She sells ice cream. In one episode, she's quite literally on the moon, operating a lunar base. This is a rabbit, in a small village, somehow holding down what appears to be every essential job in the entire local economy. There's a running fan theory. And honestly, it's one of the most popular in the whole fandom. That Miss Rabbit is either secretly extremely wealthy, secretly overworked to the point of collapse, or that there are simply multiple Miss Rabbits and the village has a cloning situation nobody's talking about. The show never explains it. She just shows up wherever a job needs doing, does it perfectly, and nobody really thanks her. The queen of the gig economy. And the babies? Those belong to Mummy Rabbit. Rebecca and Richard we covered, but there are also baby twins, Rosie and Robbie Rabbit. So between the two sisters, you've got one raising 4 children and the other apparently running the town's entire infrastructure. Where is Daddy Rabbit during all this? He shows up occasionally. He's a bit useless. And that's the joke the adults catch, and the kids never will. The baby who barely exists. Now, the baby I opened with. The one who got a whole arrival episode and then evaporated. His name is Baby Alexander. He's Auntie Pig and Uncle Pig's baby, Peppa's little cousin. And when he was introduced, there was a whole episode about it, the family cooing over the new arrival, George unsure what to make of him, the classic new baby stuff. But here's the strange part, and this is the thing that genuinely trips people up. After all that fuss, Baby Alexander barely appears again. He gets wheeled out for the occasional family gathering, handed around like a party snack, and then vanishes back into whatever off-screen dimension the babies of Peppa Pig live in when the plot doesn't need them. His own parents are basically part-timers themselves. You'll go seasons without seeing any of them, and then suddenly, there he is, back in the crowd scene, aged not a single day. And there's another one who's even more of a ghost. Chloe Pig, Peppa's older cousin, pops up here and there. But the deeper you go into the extended Pig family tree, the more you find these characters who exist for one episode, establish a relationship, and then evaporate. It's like the town has a revolving door of relatives who show up for Christmas and are never spoken of again. Which brings me to the theory that the internet absolutely will not let go of. The height problem nobody can explain. Okay, this one went viral a few years back, and I need you to hear it out, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And it makes every baby we've just talked about a lot more alarming. Fans did the math on how tall the characters supposedly are based on the show's own proportions and the size of the houses, the cars, the furniture, and the numbers that came back were concerning. Daddy Pig, according to one very committed piece of fan calculation that went viral, comes out to somewhere around 14 feet tall. Peppa herself, by the same logic, lands north of 7 feet. As a child, a 7-foot-tall child pig. And if Peppa's 7 feet, then George, the baby, is a genuinely enormous toddler, and every single one of these babies we've been talking about, Richard, the twins, baby Alexander, they'd all secretly be giants. That harmless bundle being passed around the family party, roughly the size of a fridge. Now obviously, this is a cartoon, and the proportions are just cartoon proportions. I seriously doubt anyone sat down and designed a 14-foot pig on purpose. But the internet ran with it so hard that it became one of the most shared facts about the show. As far as I can tell, the team behind it has never confirmed a word, which of course only makes people believe it more. That's how theories work. And it's a neat reminder of the actual question here. These babies aren't people with heights and homes. They're pieces. So where do the pieces come from? Where these babies actually come from? The real answer. Let's step out of the world for a second and answer the question the title actually promises. Where do all these babies really come from? Not in the story, in real life. Who decided a British village needed this many toddlers? Peppa Pig was created by 3 men, Neville Astley, Mark Baker, and Phil Davies, who'd worked together in animation for years and pitched Peppa around the year 2000. The show first aired in 2004, and the original concept was simple. A preschool show about a little pig and her everyday life. Playgroup, grandparents, puddles. That's the whole pitch. But here's the thing about making a preschool show that becomes a global monster hit worth billions. You need more episodes. Constantly. And every new episode needs new little situations, new small stories, and, crucially, new characters. Because you can't run the same 5 kids through 400 plots without it getting stale. So a lot of it likely came down to demand, production demand. Every time the show needed a fresh dynamic, it could introduce a new family, and a new family conveniently comes with a baby to mirror George, because a new baby is instant preschool drama. New baby means jealousy, means sharing, means the baby broke my toy, means a tidy little 4-minute lesson. Babies are, from a writer's point of view, about the most reliable plot engine you can install. That'd explain why the show keeps producing them and then quietly shelving them. Alexander probably wasn't sidelined because anyone was careless. More likely, he was introduced to power a specific set of stories about a new baby in the family, and once those stories were told, there was simply nothing left for a baby who can't talk to do. So he faded. Same with half the extended family. In a sense, they're not characters so much as tools, brought out when needed, put back in the drawer when they're not. The Australian invasion. Here's a detail that surprised me, and it might explain why so many of the newer babies and side characters feel slightly different from the originals. The show expanded its cast over the years to include more animals and more families, and part of that push seems tied to the fact that Peppa became a phenomenon in different countries. By some accounts, none bigger than Australia, where Peppa was reportedly outperforming even homegrown kids' shows. The obsession got so intense that Peppa became a bizarre pop culture mascot for a generation of Australian kids, and, weirdly, a lot of their parents too. To keep a global audience, the world had to grow. So we got kangaroos. Kylie Kangaroo joined the friend group, and Kylie has a baby brother, Joey Kangaroo, who lives in his mom's pouch. Which, if you think about it, is the show being weirdly accurate about kangaroo biology for once. You could read Joey as Australia's baby, dropped straight into the cast so an entire country could see itself hopping around in the village. We got Molly Mole, who lives underground. Gerald Giraffe, who's so tall he can't fit in a normal shot. Each new animal usually arrived with a family attached, and each family usually arrived with, you guessed it, another baby. So the population of Peppa's village probably didn't grow because of anything happening in the story. More likely, it grew because the show became a global hit and needed to reflect a wider audience back at itself. Every baby is, in a sense, a little diplomatic gesture. A new toddler for a new country. The one that's actually kind of touching. Now I want to slow down for a second, because there's one baby situation in this show that I genuinely think is lovely, and it flies right over everyone's head. Remember Susie Sheep, the only child I told you to hold that thought about? Here's the payoff. For the show's entire run, Susie has no siblings, and her family setup is a little quieter than everyone else's. Her dad barely appears. And this is the part that gets me. Instead of doing the easy thing and handing Susie a baby brother to fill the frame, the way it happened with Rebecca, the way it happened with basically everyone, the show left that space empty. Whether that was deliberate or not, the effect is lovely. Susie's independent, a bit bossy, a bit of a fantasist who's always pretending to be a nurse or an explorer. She fills the space where a sibling would be with imagination. And that's actually a really honest picture of what being an only child can be like. It's a small thing, but it makes me think the people writing this show weren't just cranking out toddlers on an assembly line. In a village practically flooded with babies, it's as if somebody looked at Susie and decided she didn't need one. Decided not every kid needs a baby in the house to be a complete little person. And in a show that is otherwise absolutely drowning in babies, that one absence stands out. The babies that don't age. The real reason the town is frozen. Here's the loop I want to close. The thing that ties every one of these babies together. From George to Alexander, to the twins, to the kangaroo in the pouch. None of them ever grow up. Think about it. The show has been running for 2 decades. In that time, real babies born the year Peppa premiered have finished school. But George is still a toddler. Richard's still a toddler. The twins are still twins, the exact same size they've always been. Baby Alexander, whenever he does appear, is still a baby. The entire second generation of children is trapped in a permanent, cheerful stasis where nobody gets older, nobody starts school, nobody learns to talk properly, and nobody ever has to leave. And that's not really a mistake. It's how a preschool show has to work. Your audience is always 3 years old because your audience is always being replaced. Every year, a new batch of toddlers ages into Peppa Pig and an older batch ages out. So the show can't really let its characters grow, because if George grew up, he'd stop being the toddler the newest 3-year-old sees themselves in. The babies are frozen because the audience is frozen. There's always a new 3-year-old, so there always has to be a George. That baby I mentioned at the start, the one who got a whole welcome episode and then basically disappeared, handed around, never questioned, I'd argue he's not a plot hole. He's a perfect little symbol of how the whole machine works. Introduced when the story needed a baby. Retired when it didn't. Never aged, because aging would break the spell. You get the sense he came from exactly where every baby in Peppa Pig comes from. Not so much a family as a decision in a production office where somebody figured the village could use one more small snorting face to keep 4-year-olds watching. And it works. That's the uncomfortable, kind of brilliant truth of it. This bright, silly, harmless little show is arguably one of the most carefully engineered pieces of children's entertainment ever made. And the babies are the gears. So here's what I actually want to know from you. Which Peppa Pig baby did you completely forget existed until right now? Alexander, the twins, the kangaroo in the pouch? Or is there one I missed entirely? Drop it in the comments, because I have a feeling this town has even more hidden toddlers than I managed to count, and I want to find every last one.